Good day and welcome to Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com, produced by Sharc, S-H-A-R-C. That's Sharc with a C, not a K, Creative. You see our Sharc Creative logo on the wall in orange and blue behind me. I'm John Marino, and we are made possible by people like our good friends at places like Entergy, Indian Point Energy Center, supporting our communities right through April of 2021. Lipolis Electric, don't be left in the dark, get Lipolis. And Hightower Westchester. At Hightower, they manage your wealth to a fiduciary standard. Welcome to the Cup of Joe political show here on Westchester Talk Radio. We are joined today by the mayor of the village and town of Mount Kisco, Gina Picinich. Gina, we thank you for being part of Westchester Talk Radio. Good to see you.
You know, it's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit more about what's going on in Mount Kisco. So thank you very much, John.
You know, sometimes people might think, look, at Mount Kisco as an afterthought. They think, well, it's Mount Kisco. Everything is fine and dandy there, which we're sure that it is, but we want to hear about all of that too. Now, before you became mayor a few years back in 2017, you were first elected. You were previously co-executive director of the Mount Kisco Chamber of Commerce. How did helping to run the chamber get you ready and prepare you for everything you need to do budgetarily as the mayor?
Yeah, and there's so much to that, John. So I've been a resident of Mount Kisco for just about 20 years now. So I existed and functioned as a resident and as a mom, as a working mom, but taking on responsibilities at the chamber gave me greater insights into the functioning and workings of the village and to some of the challenges that the business community had been experiencing, which was not very much unlike challenges that were happening in small towns all across the United States of America, and particularly here in Westchester. Transition in the retail environment created big challenges for downtowns. Empty storefronts, high vacancy rates, the need to generate more interest in small communities, draw people. All of these things I learned through my experience at the chamber, which was very important to transition into my role, in this position right now as mayor. That was actually the motivation for me to run for office, a recognition that a beautiful and wonderful community such as Mount Kisco, with people who cared so deeply, that we hadn't quite realized our full potential. And so that was the launching point for me to come together with residents and business owners to say, we can do more in our community if we just all wrap our arms around it and do it.
Now, I'll make an analogy with that, with what you've said. I've had friends throughout my 40-plus years in the radio and entertainment business around the tri-state area do the kind of things I do. Then they maybe go on and buy a radio station, and they say, well, you know, all the things the owners would tell us why they couldn't pay us more. I found that is true. You got to keep the lights on, first of all, when you run a radio station. Then you got to sell. You got to bring enough in. Then you can hopefully pay people what they would like. And when you are a resident of a community, then all of a sudden, like you become the mayor. You see the same kind of things that those in office who told us they couldn't do this before. I see why it wasn't possible. Let's see what we can do to make this possible now.
You know, and that is such a good point. So I come from a business background, not a civil service or government background. So my first term in office, I kept on saying, well, let's just do that. And someone would say, well, no, we need to vote on that. No, we need to do this at the public meeting. And I'd say, okay, I get that, but we need to have a public hearing first. So there's important process that is put in place in government to protect the people and to hear from the people. And so the decision making, it's really important to keep in mind that anyone who is elected to public office is there to serve the community. And so I view politicians and public servants differently. My path was never in politics, kind of still not. I'm here to serve my community. But it is important to note that there are things that people say, well, just do that. There's a whole process that needs to be walked through and thought through because you don't want to generate unintended consequences. So every action, every step must be done and handled with serious thought and due diligence, and not simply taken flippantly.
It's interesting how you point out that process, and we hear that word more and more the last number of years in any business, in any line of work. There's a process. An athlete gets injured, there is a process before he can come back that he's got to go through. Like Saquon Barkley of the Giants, who tore his knee up a couple of days ago. He's got a process he's got to go through before he gets back on the field, hopefully by the start of the 2021 football season, whenever that might be. You talk about the process in public service, in office, and how that works. And I'm not sure that residents and voters always understand that it's great to have an idea, but you have to walk it through to make sure that every angle of that idea is covered, and just to kind of get a read as to whether or not that idea might actually work. And that's what the process is about.
It is. And the truth is, like you say, people are very busy living their lives. They have little care or regard for a process, because they're busy doing what they're doing. And so a large piece of what I find I have the opportunity to do is help people understand why we come to decisions that we do and all the steps that we've taken to get to it. And so communication and generating understanding is really, really important in the role that I have. Fortunately, the people of Mount Kisco are really, really remarkable, incredible people, and they provide us that opportunity to listen and to share, and so that's really beneficial. That's the part that I really enjoy about what I'm doing right now, is that I get to interact with folks across the community.
Now, here you are in your second term in office, correct?
Yeah.
Right? First elected 2017, re-elected 2019. 2017, first election, first couple of years. You learn what the job is about, obviously. Now in your second term, you can begin to implement certain things you want to get in. And then this thing called COVID happened early in 2020. How much did that skew what you wanted to do, and how has the effect of COVID been on the village and town of Mount Kisco?
Yeah, global pandemic was certainly not part of the plan. And so the key thing was to be able to pivot and focus on public health and safety. And the truth is, local municipalities don't have the services that focus on that. Maybe some of the larger cities in Westchester, like New Rochelle and Mount Vernon and White Plains, but in a small municipal government, we don't have a health department. And so we've relied heavily on the county and, of course, on the state. And we're very, very fortunate to have George Latimer as a leader here in Westchester County. He has been extraordinary in pulling together municipal officials across the county to ensure that we all have the same information, that we're consistent in what we're doing, always focused on health and safety. It's been a great challenge. Of course, it's been a great challenge for everyone. In the peak of things, what we focused on here was to ensure that there was the continuation of services. So we had staff working on a reduced schedule throughout the peak of the crisis, and we moved all of our services online, also available by phone and by email, to ensure that we can still do really important things like issue birth certificates. Those things are basic things that people need. We needed to collect taxes, or we needed to ensure real important stuff like that the garbage is picked up, that the sewer is functioning, that the water is being delivered. So all of that continued in a safe and distant manner all throughout the crisis. So there was no interruption of services. But there were things that we had to, shut down and make sure were shut down. Obviously, businesses across the community, based on the governor's orders, we had to ensure that people were doing what they were supposed to be doing in open public spaces like our parks. Again, the people of this community have really stepped up. And when we look at the numbers here, We suffered greatly, like everyone did, with high counts early on. But since June, the numbers here have been stable and quite low, and they continue to be. And we get a little blip every now and again, but it evens out. I think maybe today I haven't gotten today's report, but we have less than 5 active cases in the village of just under 11,000 people. So
since that time in June, Westchester has really gone down. That spike hit a high point and came down. Yeah. You talk about the county executive, George Latimer, who has gotten A++ across the board from Democrats, Republicans, independents alike around the county for everything, the leadership he's shown throughout this pandemic. Now, Governor Cuomo lives in town, correct, in Mount Kisco?
Actually, Governor Cuomo lives in Newcastle.
Newcastle, okay?
Yes.
You hear different things. Bedford Hills, Mount Kisco for a long time. I did hear Newcastle, so it is Newcastle. He's on the other side of the border, right?
Just ever so slightly, but we certainly see him around the village driving some of his great cars, and he frequents our businesses, and he has been here in town, although we haven't seen him in a while. He's clearly been very, very busy. Up in all.
Yeah. He's a Mount Kisco regular then, as opposed to a resident. But the fact that he's so local, does that make a difference when you have to respond to a situation like this? The governor sees it firsthand where he lives.
I think the governor is very aware of things that are going on all over the state. And again, during this crisis, I don't know how frequently he's actually been here in the village. So, but certainly I'm confident that he has had boots on the ground in a variety of places. Yeah.
Now, as we move into the fourth quarter of 2020 here, and 2021 is right behind us, the holidays are upon us in less than 2 months. When you came into office, one of your big plans was revitalizing downtown and taking downtown and redeveloping down there within the village, within the town, as much as possible. How successful have you been with this plan since day one, knowing what happened earlier in 2020 and what we deal with now with this pandemic?
Yeah. So the first thing that we started off with was we launched a comprehensive planning process. And so that we hadn't updated our comprehensive plan for quite a long time. And so we launched that process. So for 18 months, with extensive community engagement, we took a look at every area and opportunity across the village. So not just downtown. How are we dealing with green space? How are we dealing with infrastructure? What does our zoning look like? And so we looked at all of that, but we had one chapter in there that did focus on downtown. How do we create a more engaged, long-term viable economy? And that was the focus. And so a great number of recommendations came out of that. And we actually have 2 commuter parking lots here in the village, because the Metro North runs through Mount Kisco, and those 2 lots are actually owned by the village. That property is owned by the village. And so what was determined was being able to put residents downtown in the same place as business was a really, really important thing to do. It had previously been permitted in our zoning, but was just permitted sometime in the 80s. So by changing our zoning and creating an overlay, and all this gets very technical, but bottom line, to create a development where people and businesses and activity could coexist is really, really important, not only for having foot traffic and revitalization of the area and more people that can go to businesses, but also to reduce car traffic. There are 2 major roads, actually one major road that runs through the village. And what we wanted to do was draw more people in without having them to have to drive here. So if people reside downtown, they don't need to move their cars to frequent our businesses. So we sent out an RFP. We had wonderful responses, but the response that we've signed a letter of intent to move forward with is with Gotham and Charter. So one residential expert developer, one commercial excellent developer, they came together to provide a really, really beautiful offering. They understood the vision of the village. So we're continuing to work with them. They've done their due diligence on the site, and we're now working in contract negotiations, because what we're talking about is a 99-year lease. So we didn't want to
Couple
sell
of
the
lifetimes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we didn't want to sell the property. We wanted to be able to maintain some level of control and partnership. So a public-private partnership. So that is continuing to move forward. But again, it has to be done thoughtfully and methodically, because people for the next 99 years, every mayor following me and every executive team will have to be living with the decisions that we make today. So again, we move forward enthusiastically and thoughtfully.
We see a lot more municipalities around the area over the last 20 years or so going to this public-private partnership combination here. And that seems to work, because when you do that, everybody has a stake in the game, as opposed to one side saying, yeah, go ahead and do it. I'm there if you need me. And then when you call them, they split. They leave. They're not around.
No, exactly. And I have to say, again, the county has been great help in this. Folks like Joe McDonald and Bridget Gibbons, who's heading up economic development and business development, across the county, have been real supporters in working with us, helping us understand all of the opportunities. Been very, very, very good in helping us through the whole process.
And you talked about infrastructure. You touched on that. I know there are spots in Mount Kisco that were built a long time ago. I have an old friend who was a construction supervisor a few years back in that area on 117 that had those plates on for about a quarter of a mile or a little more. 3-4 years ago that they worked on. He was part of the crew that helped direct the work on that over there. And he'd tell me about it. And I'd say, gee, what's the problem there? And he'd say, John, these were built like, 100 years ago or more. I mean, this is just par for the course. It's just the way things work, and it takes time to get it done. And now after these 3 or 4 years, I believe that's done. There's much more that's been done. It seems like you've really focused on the infrastructure within Mount Kisco.
Yeah, no, and that was a high priority. So there was as you said, Mount Kisco's been around for a long time, so have many other communities in Westchester, but continuing to make the investment to maintain infrastructure is vital. So it's roads, it's water systems, it's buildings. And we're very fortunate that the administration before me had been very, very prudent in their fiscal management. So Mount Kisco is in very strong financial footing when it comes to our reserves. But you have to balance reserving and investing. And so our village manager, Ed Brancotti, is very, very diligent about ensuring we maintain that balance. So when I came into office, I said, what is every infrastructure project that we need to do over the next 5 years that we'll be paying for the next 20 or 30? So let's put everything on a list, put it on a massive spreadsheet, and let's determine how much this is going to cost us. What can we afford? What can we not afford? Because again, all this is funded primarily through taxpayer dollars and whatever grants we could get along the way. So we put everything on a spreadsheet. We said, how can we pay for this? And then what's the order of priority based on basically triage and urgency? And so we have a very aggressive but very responsible capital plan that doesn't overburden the taxpayers. It focuses, again, on buildings. We have a separate plan that deals with our water and sewer infrastructure. We're one of the few communities in northern Westchester that actually has water and sewers. Long history there, but bottom line, continuing to invest to ensure that the structure that makes this community so desirable continues to be so.
We are joined here on Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com, produced by Sharc, S-H-A-R-C, Sharc with a C, not a K, Creative. We are joined here on the Cup of Joe political show by the mayor of the village and town of Mount Kisco, Gina Picinich. And Gina, as we move now towards, as We've already mentioned the back end here, final quarter of 2020 into 2021. Police reform, social justice, key issues in everything we do now. And Governor Cuomo has issued his directive for every municipality around the state to get on his desk a plan. I believe it's by April of 2021 for police reform. What does police reform and adhering to the calls for social justice now, what does all that look like and shape up into in Mount Kisco?
Yeah, all of that's wrapped together, but it needs to be thought of step by step. So I don't know if you're aware, but Mount Kisco has a very strong relationship with the Westchester County Police. Yes. So our police precinct here in Mount Kisco is staffed by the Westchester County Police.
And that was a deal cut about 5 or 6 years ago, right? 2014, 2015?
Again, my predecessor was very forward-thinking in this. We had a small police department at high expense. And so working with the Westchester County Police, they provide that service for us, and we have access to all of the resource at a fair cost, and delivering a very, very high level of service.
And so, if I remember right, Mount Kisco was the first municipality in Westchester to partner up with the county police this way, correct?
Yeah, for full services to fully staff the precinct. I do believe up in Portland they have been providing some services on the overnight, but at this level, yes, Mount Kisco is the first to do it. Again, and I have to credit people who came before me for that. But we did just renew the contract for another 5 years last year. And again, thanks to the partnership of the county having been through the first contract, we were actually able to save more money based on how the implementation had gone. But that being the case, again, the issue at hand, social justice. So the county has actually put together a reform and reinvention task force, of which members of the Mount Kisco community are sitting on that task force. And so we are actively engaged in the conversation that's happening with the county police at the county level. We're going to look to have, they've done a public hearing here in the village through the county, but we're going to look to have a separate public hearing locally, and not really a public hearing, a public comment session for further suggestions that we can push up. Another thing that we've done, though, is we've formed what we're calling an inclusion think tank. So really smart and capable people from across our village who in their lives have felt marginalized or treated unfairly have come together so that we can think about what are ways that government can make our services more available, more accessible, and more inclusive. So our focus is on how do we build our community to be a place of greater inclusion so that everyone feels that they're not just welcome, but truly able to engage and a part of what's going on.
And when you feel more included, a village, a town, a municipality, a locale becomes more desirable to live in.
100%. And, one of the things that we don't have here in Mount Kisco is you look at our Board of Trustees. We're folks who maybe come from different places, but we're not representative of our whole community. We have a large Latinx population. We also have other people of color in our community, and they're not represented on our board. And I think it's because folks don't necessarily feel comfortable in stepping forward. So we have to find more ways to say, your voice is important here. Step forward and be part of decision making. And so we have to make it such that people feel good doing that. And so one of those simple ways that we just started that yesterday, really small steps, but we hosted yesterday open office hours. So myself and a gentleman, Domingo, who works with us, whose native language is Spanish. So we were outside Village Hall yesterday and we opened up a Zoom, and anyone can come down, chat with us. What are your ideas, your concerns? What do you need help with? And so we're going to be doing that on a regular basis, just simply to be more open and available and accessible so that people can feel comfortable working with government and engaging with government.
And you see, it seems like you're setting a new model here by doing this too. How many governmental offices like mayor, like governor, maybe a little bit too high in the totem pole for the governor to stand outside of the state capitol in Albany like you did yesterday with Domingo, but how many locales do that where their elected representatives stand outside the building of governance and say, hey, we want to bring you inside here, tell us what you think? That's a new model to me of doing things.
Well, you know what? I think the focus, again, is not on who else is doing it. I think the focus for us is local government is about impacting people's everyday lives. And so we're not making big decisions with reference to, whether we go to war. We're not making legislation that deals with pro-life or gun control. We're ensuring and trying to ensure that your everyday life in our community is one where you can enjoy and be comfortable and happy.
As
so
they
it's
say, all politics is local, right?
Most definitely.
This proves
And
it.
so exactly.
Yep.
So direct contact with people. And again, it doesn't have to be me. It's everyone in this community feeling they can walk into Village Hall and will be treated with dignity and kindness, no matter who they are, because they deserve that. And so we have to ensure that that happens at every level for everyone.
And when you talk to people like this, you just might be surprised as to some of the ideas that might come out in the conversation that maybe you never thought of before, right? Or you thought about it in a different way.
I'll give you something very, very simple. So we have volleyball courts over at our park, and those courts are not in really great shape. And right now you can't play volleyball in the state of New York because it's considered a high-risk sport.
Right.
But some folks have been complaining that those are not in good shape, yet our tennis courts right now are just being redone. That was part of our capital plan. Well, it just so happens that there's a group of Latinx folks who play volleyball very, very regularly. And so we need to refocus our energy and some of our capital on ensuring that we get those courts in good shape so that those folks who play volleyball feel comfortable going to our park and knowing that we want them to be there. We want them to be playing volleyball because they are just as much an important part of this community. So we're going to do that. So we're going to sit down and figure out how we ensure that we get those courts in shape. And again, this is not earth-shattering decisions, but these are important things that impact people's everyday life. And that's what we need to be thinking about.
The mayor of Mount Kisco, the village and town of Mount Kisco, is Gina Picinich, and Gina is with us here on Westchester Talk Radio. Mayor, the school year has opened. Fox Lane High School in town in Mount Kisco is open, et cetera, et cetera. What does this reopening look like now in the village and town of Mount Kisco? How far have we gone? How far might we go? How soon might we go a bit farther, or is it too early to tell?
I will say last year in the spring, school was a challenge for many. But the Bedford Central School District is really focused on a plan to ensure that learning is happening wherever students are. So families had an option of a hybrid model or being fully remote, and different families have made the choices that they're most comfortable with. I'm actually a mom of a high school student, and so she has been actively engaged in classroom activity, both remotely and at the school. So things, in my personal opinion, are off to a good start. Again, I can only speak to that as a mom and a user of the service because all decisions with reference to the school district are up to the school board. Right. But to this point in time, from a mom's view, things are going as they should be, and I'm very happy about that.
So
Now
basically, it's kind of like a reverse situation here for you. You can't make policy for the schools, but now you can play the role of the mom who can help influence policy, just like someone that you speak to in front of the town office building where you do your work. Somebody comes by, says, hey, Mayor, how about this? How about that? Now you can do this with the school board too.
No, absolutely. And I will say that, so the Bedford Central School District is comprised of a bunch of municipalities who send students there, Bedford, Pound Ridge, Newcastle, North Castle. And so we are all partners with the school district. So as a municipal government, we work with the school district. We provide ideas. We provide suggestions. Again, we work together, but decision-making is up to the school district.
Right. Now, fourth quarter, 2020, the new year, 2021.
Yeah.
You have an opportunity to reshape budgets here again now based on everything that's happened. We hope we are on the other side of the curve here for the moment.
Yeah.
What does 2020, the remainder of it, and into 2021 look like budgetarily for you? Or is that a bit too early to tell because sometimes things change day by day?
Yeah. So as you said at the start, Mount Kisco is both a town and a village. We are coterminous, one of 5 across the state of New York. So the boundaries of our village are contained totally within the boundaries of our town.
So there are only 5 in the entire state? And the entire
and 3 of them
wow.
Westchester.
So you're really in a unique situation and spot like this.
Yeah. So we actually operate as a village, which means that our budget does not run with a calendar year, it runs with a fiscal year. So we've already projected and are in a new budget year, which gave us a real benefit. Because in the middle of the peak of the crisis, when the bottom seemed to be falling out, we ended our fiscal year the very last day of May and started our new one the 1st of June. So we were able to take a look at the new year early on and pull things in where we knew revenues would be shorter and tighten our belts a bit. So we're able to spread the crisis over 2 fiscal years. So we started June with a new budget. We had to make some assumptions as we were doing our budget planning, some serious assumptions. And we started in February, March, April. And so we head into this year on good financial footing. We are not rolling in the dough, but we are not running a great deficit either. There have been more bumps in the road. You know, we had a storm recently in which we've had to invest a lot of money.
And we're in hurricane and tropical storm season, so who knows what happens the next 2 months too.
Yeah, so throw all that into global pandemic and social justice concerns. And so, you know, all of this in some size, shape, or form does cost more money to help people, to make changes, to fix things. So, you know, we're keeping a very close eye. We're very tightly managing, but Mount Kisco has always been very fiscally prudent. I can give you an example. So there was an increase in sales tax last year, and so that was a 1% increase in Westchester County, of which some of that would be shared back with local municipalities. Because remember, sales tax that are generated in Mount Kisco doesn't come to Mount Kisco. It goes to the county, and then they reslice that up and send it back, unlike cities. We never included that sales tax increase in our budget planning because it wasn't to be permanent. We weren't sure if it was going to be permanent. So any extra that actually came in on that made up for the sales tax loss that occurred due to COVID. So again, we're very conservative in our budgeting to ensure that we don't find ourselves in a deficit position. So,
is it more advantageous for you to work as a village as opposed to as a town? More advantages that way? Like, for example, absorbing the brunt of COVID over 2 fiscal years instead of 1.
Yeah, that just happened to be fortuitous timing. So that we couldn't have planned for. But, there are different things that villages can do that towns can't, do that villages can. So villages operate more like cities. And so they have mayors, like cities have mayors, towns have supervisors.
Right.
So there is some benefits to each. And here in Mount Kisco, we get to do both. So the folks that decided to make this change, which they did in the 70s, was really, really smart future planning and future thinking.
You get the best of both worlds that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that seems to work in Mount Kisco, no doubt about that.
Very much so.
Now, you have a very busy schedule as the mayor, and yet you were able to, just a few days ago, be part of the Meet the Mayor Challenge. Is that kind of like meeting the mayor?
So that was a little while ago. Yeah, so that was at the library. So our library has a wonderful reading program that they do through the summer, and there were all these tasks and challenges that the students worked to achieve along with the reading that they did. And so one of the things that they put in was Meet the Mayor. So I got to be in my office and have the opportunity to meet students who live in the village who came in to say hello. We talked a little bit about the books that they were reading.
Right.
So great opportunity for me, again, to meet more folks across the village.
Will you do this again? Anything else like this lined up, or still to be determined?
No, anytime they ask. Anytime they ask, whenever somebody puts together a program like that, again, it's my job to be accessible to folks, and to be available to folks as best I can. But yeah, stuff like that is just fun. That's a great part of what I get to do.
And that's a nice diversion from what you have to do on a day-to-day basis, right? Some of the things, right? Yeah.
Again, getting to work with folks all across the community, to hear their thoughts and ideas. It's great. Nobody can do this job and think that they can do it in isolation. And if anyone seeks to approach it that way, they couldn't possibly be successful. It's knowing and understanding that you only know so much. And again, it goes back to people's everyday life experiences. And I can't determine what somebody else is thinking or feeling or believing. So I have to be willing to listen and understand. And then try to figure out. I'll make another
sports analogy here about that too. A local football coach. Well, Jets head coach Adam Gase was said about him in an article that I read last couple of days that he kind of operates like Thanksgiving last year, Thanksgiving week. He didn't take off for Thanksgiving, just everything was full speed ahead, preparing for the next game. And he kind of operates that way in a world where I don't want to call it isolation, but he's very focused. And like you said, you can't always operate that way when you are in this kind of a leadership position. You do have to sometimes step out and step aside for just a little bit and find those fun things and fun times like you did with the Meet the Mayor Challenge.
It's that, and also understanding that village government doesn't operate with one person. There is a huge, broad team of people who actually are the ones who make things happen. So I'm generally the mouthpiece and the communicator on things. But
there's a CEO, right? You're the CEO.
But there's a village board who also is actively engaged in decision making. We have a village manager, an assistant village manager. We have people who head up recreation, people who lead our DPW teams. We have senior programs. So every player, if we go to sports, every player has an important role on the field, right? So you can't move the football down the field unless you have everybody doing their part.
Right.
And the folks in this village, be it staff, be it elected officials, are truly extraordinary in that they understand the importance of their role and the contribution that they make. Village governments run very slimly. We don't have big, broad offices with lots and lots of people and lots of extra. You have to do as much as you can with as little as possible to be fair to the taxpayers.
You may be the quarterback, but you have to have the running backs and the wide receivers and the offensive linemen, et cetera, and you have to snap the ball the right way too, right first of all, in order to make it all work.
Absolutely, because I'm throwing the ball to no one, will never score.
You just get picked off and the ball goes back the other way, then you're in a lot of trouble that way. And what people don't understand, too, I think, is that all the different positions you mentioned that bring village and town government together, everybody comes from a diverse background that brings what they know to the table, to the playing field, and that's what makes it all work. One person may be an expert in one area, not know so much about another area, but you have somebody who you can rely on in that other area and every area to pull the whole thing together.
100%, 100%. And that's the key to it all, finding smart, capable, talented people and listening to them.
Our mayor in the village of Mount Kisco and the town of Mount Kisco is Gina Picinich, and she's joined us here for the last little bit on Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com, produced by Sharc Creative. That's Sharc with a C, not a K, on our Cup of Joe political show. Mayor, thank you for being part of Westchester Talk Radio. Very interesting conversation. Hope we get to do it again sometime soon. All the best for the rest of 2020 into 2021.
Well, thank you. And again, I really appreciate your providing the opportunity, and just say to everybody out there, please come join us in the Big Little Village. There's lots to do, lots to see, great restaurants, great activities, and a really wonderful hometown.
And a lot more still to come. No doubt about that. With the Mayor Picinich, Gina Picinich, in the village and town of Mount Kisco. Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com. Presented by our good friends at places like Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center, supporting our communities through April of 2021. White Plains Hospital, thanks to all of our heroes at White Plains Hospital for all they've done throughout the COVID pandemic here in 2020. Wartburg Healthcare and Rehabilitation in Mount Vernon, Park Sterling Realty in Bronxville, and Michael Labriola, Landscape Design and Construction. I'm John Marino. Catch all of our Westchester, Fairfield, Putnam, and Dutchess Talk Radio programming on our YouTube channel, the Sharc Creative YouTube